tell me a little bit about how you got into journalism and why you ended up choosing this as a career path?
Yeah, I kind of stumbled into it accidentally. When I was growing up, I always bought magazines and I was super into magazines and I started making my own. And I started out making music magazines because that's what I was really into, not thinking anything of it, just as a hobby. And in high school, I was on this school paper, and in college, I was on the school paper. But the whole time, I was in the back of my head, I was like, I need to get a real job at some point. I didn't know what that was going to be. Um, and then I just kept working in newspapers. And, by the time I was at the Chronicle, I'd turned around and I'm like, wow, I didn't realize I was doing this all along. I didn't recognize that that's what I was my career path, but it just kind of presented itself to me just because I was so into it. And yeah, that's really, I kind of accidentally stumbled into it. When I went to college, I didn't even have a major declared. I was just studying humanities because I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Mhm. And have you written for other newspapers before the San Francisco Chronicle?
Yeah, I freelanced. I started out freelancing. Well, I made my own magazine, and then that didn't make any money. But so on the side, I was always freelancing for mostly magazines like Rolling Stone, and I wrote for National Geographic, and um, all the magazines are gone now, so I don't. There are only a few still left in publication,
Right.
but yeah, I did a lot of freelancing. As you probably have learned, there's not a lot of money in journalism, so even with my job at the Chronicle, I continued writing for other outlets just to supplement my income and write about some different things.
Great. Um, what would you say the hardest thing about your job would be?
It's so normally I'm the pop music critic for the Chronicle, and then so for years I've just been doing concert reviews and interviewing bands and covering festivals, album reviews, things like that. In March, when the coronavirus hit and shut everything down, they pretty much needed everyone to jump over to coronavirus coverage. So since March, I've been doing mostly coronavirus coverage and a little bit of arts and entertainment on the side, but my primary focus has shifted, and it's really been, I'm still learning how to do it. So even though I've been writing for more than 20 years, every day feels brand new. And I don't know if this is something that I don't like about it. It's something I think I actually like, but may not be comfortable for a lot of people. When I wake up, I don't know what I'm going to do on any given day. So the news kind of presents itself. So it's that not knowing and not having kind of a set routine, which I like, but for some people may be a little challenging because people like to go into a job and know what they're doing.
What do you enjoy most about your job?
It's really talking to people. When I was doing music, I got to interview some very creative minds, so talk to everyone who has ever put out an album, like, and got to meet a lot of my heroes and idols, and really not just meet them and say hello, but talk to them the way you're talking to me now and ask them questions about their work and their inspiration. And now that I'm doing coronavirus coverage, it's amazing. I'm talking to doctors in ICUs and emergency rooms. I'm talking to really high-ranking scientists, and I'm learning a lot. So I just love the interaction. And I think most journalists, people who decide to become journalists, are curious by nature. So I always have questions, and it's fun to be able to talk to people who can answer them.
So obviously the pandemic's impacted you individually being a music critic. Do you think that in general journalism has changed due to coronavirus?
I think it's taken a much more important role because the coronavirus has become so politicized that people don't know who to trust. You have the city government telling you one thing, the state government, then the federal government, and then you have people in high power positions taking down like the health authorities. So it's really become the journalist's job to filter all the information that's flying around. And I think when you pick up the San Francisco Chronicle or the New York Times, you have some reassurance that the person who has written the article has done some research and kind of picked out the truth from the propaganda and presented it in a kind of nonpartisan way. So I think journalism has become much more important as far as being the source that people can trust. And personally, I've been writing a lot of utility articles, like advice on mental health and advice on what's safe to do, what activities and things like that. And I find that the engagement on those things is really high now. People are really reading that stuff and looking forward to it.
Do you think that this will be like a permanent change in the journalism industry? Do you think that it'll ever go back to whatever it was before, whatever the role journalism played in society before? Do you think we'll return to that, to the way it was before the pandemic, or do you think this is kind of a more permanent shift for the whole industry?
Well, I would say journalism has always been important, and before this all happened, we were still covering a lot of important topics. I don't know if people were paying as much attention or think they had less time and more distractions. But I think, people are learning that cable news and television news, things like that, are a little bit more entertainment than informational. And I think the shift isn't happening within journalism because we've been doing important work all along. I think the shift is happening in public perception, and people are realizing the value of having a hometown newspaper that's keeping track of what's happening in the world and in their backyards. So it's the work that we've been doing all along. It's just getting more recognized now, and I hope that's permanent. I hope people understand how valuable newspapers are.
What advice would you give to someone that's an aspiring journalist, no matter how old or young, just anyone that would like to be a journalist or pursue that?
I think it's persistence. You really have to be committed to doing it because it's not always rewarding, financially, or I get a lot of hate mail. No matter what I write, it's just like someone gets upset. But curiosity, being curious, and really keeping an open mind and realizing that you're learning to write every day and that you just keep getting better. I look at stuff I wrote 10 years ago and I'm kind of embarrassed by it, but it's okay because it's all part of the process. And when I was reviewing concerts, I'd get home really late at night because you have to write them that night, and I'd open my document to start writing the review, and every time it felt brand new. Like it was just like it's almost like you forget how to do it every single time. It's like having homework every day. So you have to be okay with that because it's a constant job. And yeah, so those are some elements. Like the persistence is really important, and the other thing is having ideas. So if you want to approach an editor, don't just say, hey, I did this, I wrote for this newspaper, I graduated from this school, can you hire me? Say all that, and then say, have a deep knowledge of what they're doing, and say, I haven't seen you do an article on this, this, and this. So, I'm interested in these topics. can I, you know, pitch these to you? So just come in with your ideas, and that's really the way to get in, I think, is having those ideas.